guys, it's Bernadette, and I am coming to you today with a journal page that I did. 2020 has been very spooky, so I thought that this would be very appropriate and also getting ready for Halloween season. So first of all, I'm going to tell you what kind of paint I'm going to use. This is Dylusions paint made by Diane Reevely, and it's made through Ranger. And this is fabulous paint. It's the only paint that I will use in my journal. It comes like this. This is the older way that they sold it, but this is the new bottles that they're selling the paint in. So it doesn't matter if it's packaged like this or like this, but it's the same paint. So what I love about this paint so much is it's pretty opaque, and you can build it up, or you can make it fade into the background, and it dries like this. It is fabulous. Love it, love it, love it. So enough about the paint. I'm going to get started. So I'm going to be using some stencils today, and I happen to have this stencil with the tree and birdhouses. I think it's cute, but I also thought that I could make it look eerie. So I'm going to be using that stencil. I'm going to be using this pattern, this Tim Holtz stencil. I don't clean my stencils. I find that whenever I do try to clean them, I end up either bending them somehow or they rip. And so to me, it's just not worth it. Unless I'm using ink. If I use ink, then I do have to wash the stencils. But for paint, once it's dry, it's permanent, so I don't worry about that. But anyway, I'm going to use this stencil as well. And then I just traced an object, a circle, onto a piece of paper and cut that circle out. And I'm going to be using this as well. And this is going to be a template. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to start with is the green paint. Now, I'm going to use it with this Tim Holtz dauber. I love this for the application of any of my paints. So you will see that I will literally need a drop of paint. So a little of this paint goes a very long way. And I'm just going to start by dipping the sponge or the dauber into that paint and going around in a circle until the bottom of that sponge is coated evenly. Now, one of the mistakes, or according to Diane, the biggest mistake that people do with her paints are they use entirely too much paint, and then it doesn't come out the way that they like it to look. So you just use a little tiny paint, literally a drop, and this will be enough to do the whole page. Let me explain the reason that this is just a lone piece of paper instead of the black journal that I showed you at the beginning of this video is because I already obviously did this page once in my journal so that you can see what the finished product is going to look like. So I went ahead and just cut the same size paper, and also I'm going to give it to my mom, and she's just going to use it as a tape in her journal. So anyway, I'm just going to put the stencil down and lightly go over the stencil with the dauber, just in a couple of spots. And I want this green to be very subtle, and I want it to be in the background. So I'm not going to do anything wild and crazy with that. So there we go. We're done with that. We're done with the sponge as well. Then we're going to move on to our orange. So the way you use the paint, if it's in this type of container, is usually there's some paint on the lid, and I just go ahead and use that. But if there isn't, I just dip the very corner or side of my round sponge. It can't be a corner because it's round. But anyway, just dip the end of the sponge into the paint, and once again, put the paint down and then go in circular motions, just enough to work that paint into that sponge. And again, I used a drop of paint. So now I'm going to just use this Tim Holtz stencil, set it down, and then go over parts of the stencil very lightly, not rubbing very hard. I'm just doing the circles for right now. And I'm not being particular about where I place the stencil down. It's just pretty random. Okay, done with the orange for now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to the white, and the same principle goes for this white paint. Little goes a long way, and especially with this particular page that we are doing, I do not want a heavy application. Whoops. I forgot to mention, if you purchase these paints or if you have them at home already, whatever you do, do not leave them uncovered for any time at all, unless you're using them, obviously. But other than that, keep them covered, because they do tend to dry out rather quickly if you leave them uncovered. So I am just going to get some paint off the lid, and I want this to look kind of eerie, smoky, so I don't want the paint to be opaque at all. So I am just going to put a little tiny bit of the white paint on there. I'm going to take this stencil, actually turn it over like this, put it on the bottom, but I am going to place it so that the tree is kind of hanging off. And if anyone is wondering, I purchased this stencil as part of a big group or a kit full of stencils. I think it was I know it was less than $10 for all of the stencils that I received, and I received quite a bit of stencils. Anyway, I paid about $10 or a little less for all of them. And they're nice. I like them. Anyway, I got them on Amazon. So do you see how you can just kind of faintly see that? Now I'm not going to focus on this side. I'm pretty much going to cover this up, but I wanted to have it anyway. Now I'm going to turn around and I'm going to use the same stencil on the other side. Now this one, I do want to show up. I do want this paint to be even fainter than it was on the other side. Let me grab a little bit more paint here. Work it through. Okay, that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So you can see the tree and how eerie it looks through that paint. I'm going to close this just for a second. I am going to need it here in another minute or so again. But now I'm going to move on to the laid back lilac. Oh, and by the way, the names of the paints that I'm using are Squeezed Orange, Laid Back Lilac, and Island Parrot, and then just the white. And I think that these three colors look really, really good together for Halloween. Again, I'm just doing the same thing I did with the purple, with all the other ones that I did. Now I'm going to use the bottom part of the circular stencil. I'm just going to kind of go along the bottom with the purple paint, and then I'm going to place it over that and kind of have that go into the background. And I'm barely putting any pressure whatsoever on the sponge. I am just going over it with very light pressure. So there we go. We're done with the first part of our journal page, which is the background. Now we're going to move on to the saying here. And this is where this is going to come in handy. I'm going to place this like so. And I am going to trace over it. Actually, I'm going to trace over it with this white pen. There we go. And then I am going to fill this in, not solid, but semi-opaque. Just semi-opaque. And I'm going to fill that circle in. I want it to remain kind of eerie and kind of look like mist is filling this circle. So I don't want to make it very opaque. There we go. And we are done with that paint for now. Now we're going to let this dry for just a second. Like I told you before, this paint dries so quickly, it's not even funny. I had that on my hand from opening the jar, not from this journal page. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry for a second or two. And in the meantime, I'm going to draw, I'm going to use this larger pen, going to draw a large comma shape. That's the best way that I could describe this shape that I'm drawing. And then I'm just going to fill it in. And I'm going to make the top pretty opaque. And then I'm going to use my finger, kind of rub that paint down and blend it in so it won't be quite as opaque as it was on the top there. And this is going to be one of our little ghosts. Now this is a Jane Davenport paint pen. That's what I'm using here. I'm just going to draw another ghost right here, a little bit larger. And do the same thing once more. I want that rounded at the top. There we go. And I love working with paint pens and paint that dries quickly because I'm a very excitable crafter. And I love, love, love to see the finished product right away, so I'm kind of impatient. And I don't like to wait for things to dry a lot of times. Once again, oops, see what I mean? Got a little overzealous there. There we go. Just make the head a little bit bigger. Color it in. Smooth it out with the finger. I want it to look like mist, semi-opaque, and I don't want the lines to be seen very easily. Okay, so there are our ghosts. Now, this should be done enough. Yep, that's dry enough. And what we're going to do now is we are going to write 2020 has been spooky. So I'm using a Posca paint pen. These Posca brand paint pens are my favorite. I absolutely love them. So I'm going to write 2020. I'm just going to go over that. No special writing or anything with the 2020. Just writing it, going back and coloring it in. My marker's a little, my paint pen's a little dry, so I'm just priming it again here off camera. There we go. Has been, and I am just going to write has been. And I do not bother to write it straight because I'm going to go back over it and change the lettering a little bit. So for the H, I just make this a little bit wider, color that in, and color some parts of the letters in, make them a little bit bolder. There we go. 2020 has been. Then I'm going to take this white paint pen again and write spooky. I'm going to write this larger. I'm going to let that dry, and while that is drying, I am going to take my black Posca pen and just draw 3 ovals on each ghost. So oval here for the eyes, and another oval for the mouth. And I'm just going to color all of it in and do that 2 more times. There we go. Now that's done. Now I am going to use this Jane Davenport Caribbean Sea marker. It's a glitzy marker, and this is in orange or actually Caribbean Sea. And I'm going to just, not neatly, but I'm going to trace over that circle. And I'm just going to go over it a couple of times. And I do want to cover this white line, so I'm just going to keep going over it. And it looks cuter if you kind of go out of line a little bit. Make some parts whiter and other parts thinner. Cover over that. There we go. That's done. Now we're going to take our black Posca pen and go along like this, making wavy lines along Spooky. And then I am going to draw big eyes in the O's. I'm going to draw a long triangle for the nose and a very crooked smile. And then I'm going to go around them, each eye, with that wavy line. Down the K. Inside the white part of the Y. And then the last step that we're going to do is, technically I would wait a little bit longer before I did this last step, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw a spider web. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to begin by just drawing a large V shape in the corner, and then from the corner I'm going to draw a line, not so straight, kind of a straight line, and another line, and we don't want them to all be even. That would look too perfect. This is going to be a spider web, and in nature, spider webs aren't completely symmetrical, so we don't want it to look like that. So we're just going to be now drawing a U shape to connect the lines, and then another U shape, space them out. And then what I like to do is I do this other side with the U shape. And you don't have to count the lines. They don't have to be equal. The more random it is, the better. And then I want to make sure that I don't connect this U with this U. In other words, I don't want to do this and connect it all. So I want it to be a little off. So I'm going to go in between. See what I'm saying? In between. Go to the bottom of that one and then in between again. There you go. There is a spider web. And to draw a spider, you just draw a couple of dashes down. Draw a big oval that's solid like that. And then you're going to want to draw a line to the side, a line straight down, and a line to the side. A line to the side, straight down, and to the side. And then the same thing behind that, a little smaller in the back. And then for the front, the same thing, line. There you go. There's your spider. Now I'm going to turn this around just so I could stay in frame, but I'm going to make another spider web right here. Make the U's, connect the lines, once again, continue drawing U shapes. Go to the one on the other side. Do the same. And you can add these lines closer together, further apart, whatever you like. And then the last one is I'm going to go in between the two and making sure I'm not connecting them all together. I hope I'm making that clear, what I'm trying to say there. There you go. There's another spider web all done. And we're going to dangle another spider, make the big oval, draw the legs, and I put 3 legs on each side. There we go, that's done. And I am going to take my Posca marker and draw 2 tiny, tiny eyes on the spider head. 2 eyes pretty close together. And then what I did, I can't do it now because this is still wet, but all I did was I went around the spider web and just traced around it with this green marker. And because it's on black paper, it really helped it to stand out. But other than that, that's all there is to it. I think I'm gonna just go ahead and, now that this is dry, add some more orange. Sometimes this pen leaks a little, but I'm ready for it. So when I press down like that, it could leak a hair, but it didn't, so we're good. There you go. And there is your completed 2020 Has Been Spooky journal page. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give me a like. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to leave one for me. Thank you, and you have a fabulous day. Until later, bye.